Ether World. 10 years ago, it launched as a dating simulator aimed at girls. But over time, it became one of the most challenging fantasy RPGs, attracting countless hardcore players. Out of hundreds of playable characters, there was one that everyone avoided. Baek Yuseol, a complete failure in a world ruled by magic. Born with Magic Leakage Syndrome, his body couldn't store mana, making him practically useless. For 10 years, only one crazy player ever chose to main him. Me. And now, I was facing the game's final boss. A monster feared by every player. The Dark Demon Dragon. With nearly complete immunity to magic, it was an impossible fight for almost every character. But there was one exception. Since Baek Yuseol couldn't use normal magic anyway, I had spent 10 years mastering his only unique skill. Blink. Looks like it's finally time. The moment I pressed the final key, a blinding silver light swallowed everything. I woke up on the cold wooden floor of a tiny cabin. Freezing wind poured through the broken walls as I stared at my trembling hands. Something felt terribly wrong. I rushed toward a cracked mirror, and my heart nearly stopped. The reflection staring back at me wasn't mine. It was Baek Yuseol. Before I could even process what happened, a translucent window appeared. Episode 1. Escape the chase. Objective: survive the tutorial pursuers. No, don't tell me. I've actually been transported into the game? And of all people, I became the weakest character in the entire story. Before I could think any further, heavy footsteps echoed outside. Search every corner. That brat couldn't have gone far. The door shook violently. There was no time to panic. I smashed through the back window and sprinted into the raging snowstorm. 3 mercenaries were already chasing me. Think. Baek Yuseol's physical abilities were terrible. His mana constantly leaked away. Against trained mercenaries, he shouldn't stand a chance. But there was one thing nobody understood better than I did. After 10 years of playing him, his movements were engraved into my body. A notification appeared. Skill available. Blink, class 0. One mercenary charged straight at me, his frost-covered blade slicing through the air. I calmly whispered, "Blink." In an instant, I vanished. The world blurred for a split second before I appeared directly behind him. Without hesitation, I drove a dagger into his neck. The remaining mercenaries froze in disbelief. He moved after using Blink? That's impossible. Normally, Blink left users temporarily paralyzed. But after 10 years of practice, I had mastered the precise timing needed to cancel that weakness. The game expected me to keep running. But this wasn't a game anymore. These enemies could die. Soon, I reached the edge of a massive canyon. Only 20 floating boulders stretched across the endless drop below. Each blink had a 3-second cooldown. One mistake, one missed timing, and I'd fall to my death. I took a deep breath, then jumped. Blink, blink, blink. I flew across the floating stones like a ghost. Everything was going perfectly until an explosion shattered the next boulder. The surviving mercenaries had reached the opposite cliff and were launching fireballs. Damn it, I can't dodge in midair. Just as the attacks were about to hit, a brilliant spear made of ice and lightning tore through the blizzard. Every enemy mage was eliminated instantly. I barely reached the final ledge before collapsing onto the ground. Looking up, I saw a lone girl standing on a distant ridge. She lowered her staff, surrounded by an icy aura. Dual attribute magic. During the tutorial? Who was she? Several days later, a magnificent magical airship floated toward the legendary Stella Academy, where towering spires pierced the clouds. As I looked over my status window, one goal filled my mind. If I wanted to cure this body's magic leakage syndrome and prevent the world's disastrous wrong ending, everything began at Stella Academy. Just then, the cabin doors opened. The entire airship fell silent. Passengers lowered their heads in respect as a young woman with crimson hair stepped inside. She carried herself like royalty, because she was Princesse Onbillon Adolby, the game's most infamous villainess. No matter which route players chose, every ending led to her tragic death. Without realizing it, I stared at her with pity. She suddenly stopped walking. For a brief moment, our eyes met. Her expression instantly turned cold. She glared at me before continuing past without another word. I let out a small sigh. An academy filled with monsters. A body that could barely use magic. A story destined to end in disaster. Let's see if the weakest character in the game can force the true ending.